and welcome to the PYQ analysis of Drishti IAS, and today's series is about environment and ecology, and this is the part 2 of environment and ecology. And in this session we are going to discuss previous year questions of environment and ecology. So as you already know that this particular thing has become very much important, especially many questions have been asked from the environment section. So we are going to briefly know about that, which kind of questions they have asked. So coming to the first question. So according to the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, which one of the following is the largest source of sulfur dioxide emissions? 2024, locomotives using fossil fuels, ships using fossil fuels, extraction of metals from ores, power plants using fossil fuels. So let's see the answer, and the answer is D. The largest source of SO2 in the atmosphere is burning of fossil fuels by power plants and other industrial facilities. Smaller sources of SO2 emissions include industrial processes such as extracting metal from ore, natural sources such as volcanoes, locomotive ships and other vehicles, and heavy equipment that burn fuel with a high sulfur content. So therefore option D is the correct answer. Coming to the next one. Consider the following statements. Statement 1, many chewing gums found in the market are considered a source of environmental pollution. Then we have statement 2, many chewing gums contain plastic as gum base. Which one of the following is correct in respect of the above statements? Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, and statement 2 explains statement 1. Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, but statement 2 does not explain statement 1. Statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is incorrect. Statement 1 is incorrect, but statement 2 is correct. So let's look at the answer, and the answer is A. Many chewing gums found in the market are non-biodegradable. Gum is considered a source of environmental pollution due to its stickiness and non-biodegradable nature. So that's why statement 1 is correct. Many chewing gums contain plastic in their gum base, which is usually polyvinyl acetate PVA. Each year chewing gum generates more than 105 tons of plastic garbage. Accordingly, chewing gum residue can be considered as a dangerous environmental pollutant. Hence statement 2 is correct. Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, and statement 2 is the correct explanation of 1. So from this question we would get to know that they are asking questions from your daily lives also. Suppose that we are consuming chewing gums. So it's very also important that whatever the daily life things which is hazardous in nature or not, which is climate friendly in nature or not, this thing also you should keep in mind so that it can be helpful for your examination. Now we'll discuss another question. Consider the following materials: agricultural residues, corn grain, wastewater treatment sludge, wood mill waste. Which of the above can be used as feedstock for producing sustainable aviation fuel? 1 and 2 only, 3 and 4 only, 1, 2, 3 and 4, 1, 3 and 4 only. And we'll look at the answer. The answer is C. Sustainable feedstocks for producing sustainable aviation fuel: corn grain, oil seeds, algae, other fats, oils and greases, agricultural residues, forestry residues, and wood mill and waste, municipal solid waste streams, wet waste, manures, wastewater treatment sludge, dedicated energy crops. So that's why the answer C is the correct answer. Coming to the next one. Consider the following statement regarding mercury pollution. Gold mining activity is a source of mercury pollution in the world. Coal-based thermal power plants cause mercury pollution. There is no known safe level of exposure to mercury. How many of the above statements are correct? Only 1, only 2, all 3 and none. And the answer is B. Gold mining can be devastating effects on nearby water resources. Toxic mine waste contains as many as 3 dozen dangerous chemicals including arsenic, lead, mercury, petroleum byproducts, acid, cyanide. So that's why statement 1 is correct. Most mercury pollution is produced by coal-fired thermal power plants. We have another explanation. The contribution of coal-fired thermal power plants for mercury emissions works out to 70.7% of the total emissions from coal combustion. According to WHO and other sources, there is no known safe level of exposure to mercury. However, some sources such as the US Environmental Protection Agency has determined the methyl mercury, a form of organic mercury, levels of 5.8 microorganisms per liter of blood are safe. As per Health Canada, blood mercury levels below 20 pg/L are considered to be in the normal acceptable range for the general adult population and below 8 pg/L for the children under 18 years of age. Pregnant people and people of childbearing age under 50 years of age who may become pregnant. Therefore, the Commission might have considered, hence statement 3 is not correct. Now we are coming to the IAS Prelims 2025 General Science. So here are the key features of that: 400 plus hours of classes, unlimited view time, prelims test series, and this is for the English medium. So if you want to know more information, you can call on to the number 87501 87501. You can also download this T-Learning app. Coming to the another question, consider the following aerosols, foam agents, fire retardants, lubricants. In the making of how many of the above are hydrofluorocarbons used? So only one, only two, only three, all four. Let's look at the answer, and the answer is C, which is the only three. Hydrofluorocarbons are man-made chemicals that are used in variety of products, including aerosols, foam agents, fire retardants, and lubricants. HFCs are greenhouse gases, and their use is regulated by the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. They are primarily produced for use in refrigeration, air conditioning, insulating foams, and aerosol propellants, with minor uses as solvents and for fire protection. So that's why option C is the correct answer. Coming to the next one. Consider the following statement. Statement 1. Carbon markets are likely to be one of the most widespread tools in the fight against climate change. Statement 2. Carbon markets transfer resources from the private sector to the state. Which one of the following is correct in respect of the above statement? Both statement 1, statement 2 are correct, and statement 2 is the correct explanation of statement 1. Both statement 1 and statement 2 are the correct, and statement 2 is not the correct explanation of statement 1. Statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is incorrect. Statement 1 is incorrect, but statement 2 is correct. Let's look at the answer. And the answer is B. Carbon markets for years sort of puff have at last become one of the most widespread tools in the fight against climate change. By the end of 2021, more than 21% of the world's emissions were covered by some form of carbon pricing, up from 15% in 2020. So that's why statement 1 is correct. Like taxes, carbon market transfer resources from the private sector to the state. So that's why statement 2 is correct. However, statement 2 is not the correct explanation of statement 1. So that's why option B is the correct answer. Coming to the next one. Consider the following: carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, ozone, sulfur dioxide. Excess of which of the above in the environment is our cause of acid rain? 1, 2 and 3, 2 and 4 only, 4 only, 1, 3 and 4. Coming to the answer, and the answer is B. So here we'll talk about the acid rain. Acid rain is a byproduct of a variety of human activities that emit the oxides of sulfur and nitrogen in the atmosphere. Burning of fossil fuels such as coal, oil, petrol and diesel produce sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide. SO2, NO2 after oxidation and reaction with water are major contributors to acid rain. When the pH of the rainwater drops below 5.6, it is called as acid rain. Effects of the acid rain. Acid rain is harmful for agriculture, trees and plants as it dissolves and washes away nutrients needed for their growth. So here it causes respiratory ailments in human beings and animals. It corrodes water pipes, resulting in the leaching of heavy metals such as iron, lead, copper into the drinking water. Acid rain damages buildings and other structure made of stone or metal. The Taj Mahal in India has been affected by the acid rain. So here we can see that how acid rain is harmful for us in a different ways. So we are going to discuss among the following crops, which one of the is the most important anthropogenic source of both methane and nitrous oxide? Cotton, rice, sugarcane, wheat. And here is the answer, which is B. And what is B? B is the rice. Rice, also in English we call it paddy, is the most important anthropogenic source of both methane and nitrous oxide. Presently, paddy production is facing major challenges, which include scarcity of irrigation water and ongoing climate change. Modification of current cropping techniques can increase yields, save water, reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Other anthropogenic sources of biogenic methane are cattle, animal waste, landfills, and biomass burning. Important anthropogenic sources of biogenic nitrous oxides are land use change, fertilizer production, and manure application. So that's why option B is the correct answer. Coming to the next one. R2 code of practices constitute a tool available for promoting the adoption of environmentally responsible practices in electronics recycling industry, ecological management of wetlands of international importance under the Ramsar Convention, sustainable practices in the cultivation of agriculture crops, integrated lands, environmental impact assessment in the exploitation of natural resources. Now we are going to know the answer, and the answer is A. Responsible recycling. In short, R2 code of practices is a set of guidelines for use by electronics recyclers to promote better environmental health and security practices when recycling end-of-life electronics. The guidelines cover computers, peripherals, cell phones, televisions sent to recyclers for proper refurbishment and recycling. So that's why option A is the correct answer. Coming to the question part, why is there a concern about copper smelting plants? They may release lethal quantities of carbon monoxide in environment. The copper slag can cause the leaching of some heavy metals into environment. They may release sulfur dioxide as pollutant. Select the correct answer using the code given below. 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, and 1, 2 and 3, and the answer would be B. There are different processes that can be used for copper production. One of the traditional processes is based on smelting in reverberatory furnaces or electronic furnaces for more complex ores, producing matte copper iron sulfide. The matte from the furnace is charged to converters, where the molten material is oxidized in the presence of air to remove the iron and sulfur impurities as converter slag and to form blister copper. The principal air pollutants emitted from the process is sulfur dioxide and particulate matter, and the main portion of the solid waste is discarded slag. Hence, statement 3 is the correct answer. Coming to the slag produced can contain significant concentration of a number of potentially toxic elements including arsenic, lead, cadmium, barium, zinc. The slag can release these potentially toxic elements into the environment under natural weathering conditions and cause pollutions of soils, surfaces, waters, groundwater. Hence, statement 2 is correct. As slag is considered chemically inert, it is mixed with the cement and is used to construct roads and railroad beds. It is also used as sand blasting. Moreover, it is added to the roofing shingles. Copper smelting does not release lethal quantities of carbon monoxides into the environment. Hence, statement 1 is not correct. Coming to the which one of the following statement best describes the term social cost of carbon? It is the measure in monetary value of the long-term damage done by the ton of CO2 emissions given year. Requirement of fossil fuels for a country to provide goods and services to its citizens based on the burning of those fuels. Efforts put in by a climate refugee to adapt to live in a new place. Contribution of an individual person to the carbon footprint on the planet Earth. Now we'll look at the answer, and the answer is A. The social cost of carbon is an estimate in dollars of the economic damages that would result from emitting 1 additional ton of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The SCC puts the effects of climate change into economic terms to help policymakers Other decision makers understand the economic impacts of decision that would increase or decrease emissions. India's country level social cost of carbon emission was estimated to be in the highest at $86 per ton CO2. It means the Indian economy will lose $86 by emitting each additional ton of CO2. India is followed by the US $48 and Saudi Arabia $47. So option A is the correct answer. Coming to the next one. So we have IAS Prelims Test Series 2025. The key features is comprehensive coverage, subject-wise evaluation, detailed explanation, and this is in the English medium. So if you want to know more information, call on to the number 87501 87501. Coming to the next one. Consider the following statement. Coal ash contains arsenic, lead and mercury. Coal-fired power plants release sulfur dioxide and oxides of nitrogen into the environment. High ash content is observed in Indian coal. Which of the statement given above is are correct? 1 only, 2 and 3 only, 3 only, 1, 2 and 3. And the answer is D. Coal ash, also referred to as coal combustion residuals or CCRS, is produced primarily from the burning of coal in coal-fired power plants. It contains contaminants like mercury, cadmium, and arsenic. Without proper management, these contaminants can pollute waterways, groundwater, drinking water and the air. Hence, statement 1 is correct. Coal-based thermal power plants are major source of sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides emissions. Hence, statement 2 is correct. According to Coal India Limited, the ash content of coal production in the country is generally 25 to 45%, whereas average ash content of imported coal varies from 10 to 20%. Hence, statement 3 is correct, and therefore option D is the correct answer. Coming to the next one. Which of the following are the region's factors for exposure to benzene pollution? Automobile exhaust, tobacco smoke, wood burning, using varnished wooden furniture, using products made of polyurethane. Select the correct answer using the code given below. 1, 2 and 3 only, 2 and 4 only, 1, 3 and 4 only, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Let's look at the answer. Answer is A. Benzene C6H6 is a colorless, flammable liquid with a sweet odor. It evaporates quickly when exposed to air. Benzene is formed from the natural processes such as volcanoes and forest fires, but most of the exposure to benzene results from human activities. The main sources of benzene pollution in the environment include automobile exhaust, industrial sources, tobacco smoke, wood burning, and fuel evaporation from gasoline filling station. Hence, 1, 2 and 3 are correct. Some industries use benzene to make other chemicals that are used to make plastics, furnitures. They are not the direct source of benzene pollution. So, 4 and 5 are not correct. Therefore, option A is the correct answer. Coming to the next one. So we have ISGS foundation course in online, and what are the key features? So we have 1000+ hours of classes, unlimited view time, prelims test series, and this is in English medium. So you can call on to the number 87501 87501. You can also download Drishti Learning app. Now we are coming to the next one. Why is there a great concern about microbeads that are released into environment? They are considered harmful to marine ecosystems. They are considered to cause skin cancer in children. They are small enough to be absorbed by the crop plants in irrigated fields. They are often found to used as food adulterants. Now we look at the answer. Answer is A. Microbeads are small, solid, manufactured plastic particles that are less than 5 mm and less than 5 mm and do not degrade or dissolve in water. Mainly made of polyethylene. Microbeads can also be prepared from petrochemical plastics such as polystyrene and polypropylene. They may be added to a range of products including range of cosmetics, personal care and cleaning products. Microbeads, because of their small size, pass unfiltered through the sewage treatment system and reach the water bodies. The untreated microbeads in the water bodies are taken up by the marine animals, thus producing toxicity and causing harm to the marine ecosystem. In 2014, Netherlands became the first country to ban cosmetic microbeads. Now you have to answer into the comment section that whether India has banned cosmetic microbeads or not. Now we are going to discuss questions. Which of the following statements are correct about the deposits of methane hydrate? Global warming might trigger the release of methane gas from these deposits. Large deposits of methane hydrate are found in the Arctic tundra and under the sea floor. Methane in atmosphere oxidizes to carbon dioxide after a decade or two. Select the correct answer using the code given below. 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, 1, 2 and 3. Now we are going to discuss the answer, and the answer is D, which is 1, 2 and 3. Methane hydrate is a crystalline solid that consists of a methane molecule surrounded by a cage of interlocking water molecules. It is an ice that only occurs naturally in subsurfaces deposits where temperature and pressure conditions are favorable for its formation. Regions with suitable temperature and pressure condition for the formation and stability of methane hydrate sediment and sedimentary rock units below the Arctic permafrost, sedimentary deposits along the continental margins, deep water sediments of inland lakes and seas, and under Antarctic ice. Hence, statement 2 is the correct. We will discuss more. Methane hydrates, the sensitive sediments, can rapidly dissociate with an increase in temperature or a decrease in pressure. The dissociation produces free methane and water, which can be triggered by global warming. Hence, statement 1 is correct. Methane is removed from the atmosphere in about 9 to 12 year period by oxidation reaction, where it is converted into carbon dioxide. Hence, statement 3 is correct. Therefore, option D is the correct answer. Coming to the next one. Consider the following: carbon monoxide, methane, ozone, sulfur dioxide. Which of the following are released into atmosphere due to the burning of crop biomass residue? 1 and 2 only, 2, 3 and 4 only, 1 and 4 only, 1, 2, 3 and 4. And the answer is D. Biomass is organic material that comes from plants and animals, and it is a renewable source of energy. Biomass contains stored energy from the sun. Plants absorb sun's energy in a process called photosynthesis. When biomass is burned, the chemical energy in biomass is released as heat. Crop residue and biomass burning forest fires is considered as a major source of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, methane, volatile organic compounds, and nitrogen oxides. Burning of the rice crop residues releases suspended particulate matter SO2, NO2, and rice crop and O3 in the atmosphere. So that's why option D is the correct answer. Coming to the next one. Consider the following statement: agricultural soils release nitrogen oxides into environment, cattle release ammonia into environment, poultry industry releases reactive nitrogen compounds into environment. Which of the statement given above is correct? 1 and 3 only, 2 and 3 only, 2 only, 1, 2 and 3. And the answer is D. According to FAO, poultry manure releases considerable amounts of nitrogen, mainly in the form of ammonia, NH3, dinitrogen, N2, nitrous oxide, N2O, and nitrate, NO3. Hence, statement 3 is correct. This is also very much important because in especially state prelims examination, they can ask the chemical name also and formula also. According to FAO, major forms of pollution associated with the intensive livestock production include eutrophication of surface water, leaching of nitrates and pathogens, and release of ammonia, methane, and other gases into the air. So that's why statement 2 is the correct answer. A range of pollutant gases, especially nitrogen compounds NO2, NO, NH3, N2O, are emitted to the atmosphere from agricultural activities, including fertilizer use, farm machinery, and livestock waste. Hence, statement 1 is correct. So that's why your option D is the correct answer. So here we have another questions. The European Parliament approved the Net Zero Industry Act recently. The European Union intends to achieve carbon neutrality by the 2040 and therefore aims to develop all of its own clean technology by that time. Which of one of the following is correct in respect of the above statement? Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, and statement 1 explains the statement 2. Both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, but Statement 2 does not explain statement 1. Statement 1 is correct, but statement 2 is incorrect. Statement 1 is incorrect. Statement 2 is correct. Now we are looking for the answer, and the answer is C. Recently, European Parliament approved the Net Zero Industry Act to bolster EU production in technologies needed for decarbonization. Hence, statement 1 is correct. The European Union has said it is aiming to become first major economy to go climate neutral by 2050. Hence, statement 2 is not correct. So, therefore, the option C is the correct answer. Coming to the another question. Consider the following statement. In India, biodiversity management committees are key to realization of the objective of the Nagoya Protocol. The biodiversity management committees have important function in determining access and benefit sharing, including the power to levy collection fees on the access of biological resources within its jurisdiction. Which of the statement given above is correct? 1 only, 2 only, both 1 and 2, neither 1 nor 2. And the answer is C. The Nagoya Protocol sought to ensure commercial and research utilization of genetic resources and sharing its benefit with the government and the community that conserve such as resources. India's Biological Diversity Act 2002 is close synergy with the Nagoya Protocol, aims to implement provisions of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Under Section 41(1) of the Act, every local body in the state shall constitute a biodiversity management committee within its area of jurisdiction. So that's why statement 1 is correct. Now we'll discuss more function about it. The main function of the BMC is to prepare people's biodiversity registers in consultation with the local people. In addition to preparation of the people's biodiversity register, the BMC in their respective jurisdiction shall also be responsible for the following: conservation, sustainable use, access and benefit sharing of biological resources, regulation of access to biological resources and or associated with traditional knowledge for commercial and research purposes. BMC may levy charges by way of collection fees from any persons for accessing or collecting any biological resource for commercial purposes from areas falling within its jurisdiction. Hence, statement 2 is the correct answer. So, we have another question. Invasive species specialist group that develops global invasive species database belongs to which one of the following organization? The International Union for Conservation of Nature, the United Nations Environment Program, the United Nations World Commission for Environment and Development, the Worldwide Fund for Nature. And the answer is A. The Invasive Species Specialist Group is a global network of scientific and policy experts on invasive species, organized under the auspices of the Species Survival Commissions of the International Union for Conservation of Nature. So, therefore, option A is the correct answer. So, we have another question with reference to the New York Declaration on Forest. Which of the following statements are correct? It was first endorsed at the United Nations Climate Summit in 2014. It endorses global timeline to end the loss of forest. It is legally binding international declaration. It is endorsed by the governments, big companies and indigenous communities. India was one of the signatories at its inception. Select the correct answer using the code given below: 1, 2 and 4, 1, 3 and 5, 3 and 4, 2 and 5. And the answer is A. The New York Declaration on Forest is a voluntary and non-legally binding political declaration which grew out of dialogue among governments, companies and civil society, spurred by the United Nations Secretary General's Climate Summit in 2014. Hence, statement 1 is correct and 3 is not correct. The declaration pledges to halve the rate of deforestation by 2020, to end it by 2030, and to restore hundreds of millions of the acres of degraded land. Hence, statement 2 is correct. So, the declaration currently has over 200 endorsers, including national governments, subnational governments, multinational companies, indigenous people, local community organization, non-government organization and financial institutions. So, statement 4 is correct. India was not one of the signatories at the time of New York Declaration on Forest inception. So, statement 5 is not correct. So, this is very important whenever we talk about any committee, any organization, any what you can say forum. It is very important to see in the context of India, because there are many questions which has been asked that India is a part or India is signatories to this particular thing or not. Now we are going to discuss The common carbon metric supported by UNEP has been developed for accessing the carbon footprint of building operations around the world, enabling commercial fanning entities around the world to enter the carbon emissions trading, enabling governments to access the overall carbon footprint caused by their countries, accessing the overall carbon footprint caused by the use of fossil fuels by the world in a unit time. And let's look the answer. Answer is A. Common carbon metric is a universal method of measuring buildings' carbon footprint. So this is the answer. Common carbon metric is a universal method of measuring the building's carbon footprint supported by United Nations Environment Programme. Common carbon metric allows emissions from buildings around the world to be consistently accessed and compared. It does not include value-based interpretation of the measurement such as weighing or benchmarking. So that's why option A is the correct answer. In the context of India's preparation for climate smart agriculture, consider the following statement. The climate smart village approach in India is a part of project led by Climate Change, Agriculture and Food Security, an international research program. The project of CCAFS is carried out under the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research headquartered in France. The International Crops Research Institute for Semi-Arid Tropics in India is one of the CGIAR research centers. Which of the statement given above is correct? 1 and 2 only, 2 and 3 only, 1 and 3 only, 1, 2 and 3. And the answer is D. The Climate Smart Village project in India is a CGIAR research program on climate change, agriculture and food security. The CCAFS started deploying climate smart village in 2012 in Africa, Burkina Faso, Ghana, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda and the South Asia, Bangladesh, India and Nepal. Hence statement 1 is correct. Climate change, agriculture and food security is carried out under CGIAR, formerly the Consultative Group for International Agricultural Research. The headquarters of CGIAR is in Montpellier, France. CGIAR is a global partnership that unites international organizations engaged in research about food security. Hence, statement 2 is the correct answer. International Crop Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics is a CGIAR research center. ICRISAT is a non-profit, non-political, public international research organization that conducts agriculture research for development in Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, with a wide array of partners throughout the world. Hence, statement 3 is the correct answer. So, with reference to Indian laws about wildlife protection, consider the following statement. Wild animals are the sole property of the government. When a wild animal is declared protected, such animal is entitled for equal protection whether it is found in protected areas or outside. Apprehensions of protected wild animals becoming a danger to human life is sufficient ground for its capture or killing. Which of the statement given above is correct? 1 and 2 only, 2 only, 1 and 3, 3 only. And the answer is B. The Wildlife Protection Act 1972 was enacted for the protection of wild plants and animal species according to section 11(1) of A Act. The Chief Wildlife Warden may, if he is satisfied that any wild animal specified in Schedule 1 has become dangerous to human life, permit any persons to hunt such animals to be hunted. No wild animal shall be ordered to be killed unless the Chief Wildlife Warden is satisfied that such animals cannot be captured, tranquilized or translocated. Hence, statement 3 is not correct. When animal is declared as protected animal under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, then it will enjoy the same protection either it is present in a protected area or outside the protected area. So, statement 2 is the correct answer. In a significant verdict, the Bombay High Court has ruled that wild animals including tigers should be treated as government property for all purposes and any damage caused by them should be compensated by the government. However, wild animals are not the sole property of the government. According to section 42 of the Wildlife Protection Act, any person can also have the lawful possession of any wild animals or any animal article, trophy, uncured trophy, the certificate of which is provided by Chief Wildlife Warden. Hence, statement 1 is not correct. So, therefore, option B is the correct answer. So we have IAS Prelims GS plus CSET online, and we have 500 plus hours of class, watch unlimited time, 30 free tests GS plus CSET, and this is in the English medium. So if you want to know more information, you can call on to the number 87501, and you can also download the Drishti Learning app. And that's it for today's session. So you already noticed that which kind of questions they're asking. They're asking about the international organization. They're asking about the international environmental treaty. They're also asking about the India's environmental condition. So these topics are very much important for examination. So keep reading the newspaper and keep extracting information that which topic is repeating again and again, and prepare your prelims preparation accordingly. Thank you. Have a nice day.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.